Now that we've seen how to use functions to calculate and return values, let's see one more example where we can use return values. This time, we'll be generating and returning random numbers, and random values are really useful in simulating any real-world behavior that involves chance or random events. Like simulating rolling dice, which we'll get to. When you roll a six-sided dice, one roll will have a value of either 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, but you aren't sure which value it will take for each roll. There's an element of chance, so we can use random numbers to generate a random roll value within this range. But before we get to that, let's learn a little bit more about random values in Java. To generate random values in Java, we'll be using a built-in math function called random. This function doesn't take in any parameters, but it returns a random value that we can then use in our programs. And like how our println function was always attached to system.out, this math function random is attached to this word math, which we'll learn more about later. And this line of code, which is a call to random, outputs a random decimal number between 0 and 1. The range of numbers it can output includes 0, but doesn't quite go all the way up to include 1. And each time we call random by saying math.random, this will return a random number. Like one call might return 0, another 0.5917, another 0.2382, and any small decimal up to almost 1. Its maximum return value is still going to be a decimal point, just really close to 1, something like 0.9999. And since math.random returns a random value as output, we can assign the value of this function call to a variable. This will be a double because it's a number that involves decimal points, and let's call this value random number. And now we can work with this returned value to get a more specific range of random values. For example, we can take the value of our random number and multiply it by 10 to get a larger random range. We know that our random number will be in the range 0 to almost 1. So if math.random outputs its lowest possible value, a 0, we'll have 0 times 10, which equals 0, for this line of code. And that will be the minimum value for this range. And if math.random generates one of its highest values, which is around 0.999, if we multiply this by 10, we'll get 9.99. And that will be our new max. So we've just changed our range from 0 to almost 1 to 0 to almost 10, just by multiplying. Next, if we want to change this range so that we're generating random integers instead of random doubles, which are numbers with decimals, we can cast this value to an int, and we're storing that value in a variable called randomInt. Casting means that you're turning one variable type into another. So when we cast a decimal number, which for random number is a type of double, to an int, this cast will drop whatever decimal value the original number has, and turn that double into an int. So say our random number has a value of 9.985. Even though this value is close to 10, when we cast this value to an int, it will just turn into 9. And the decimal part, 0.985, will be ignored. It's the same for other cases. If our random number is something like 1.252, this decimal portion, 0.252, will be ignored, and a cast will turn it into just 1. A value of 0.5728 will have this whole decimal portion ignored and will turn into the integer 0. And to do this casting, we just write our casting type, in this case int, which we want our number to become, in parentheses right before the value we want to change. In this case, right before the value of random number, which starts out as a double. Now this random int that holds the value of our cast random number will always be a value in the integer range from 0 to 9, including 9. Great! Now let's use this knowledge about casting and changing range of random numbers to help us write a program that simulates and returns the correct integer values for randomly rolled dice.